Happy Sunday, everybody. Let's get rolling on Flashpoint. With us this morning, our insiders from the left, Jill Alper and Stephen Henderson. From the right, Nolan Finley and Jason Roe. They're here to discuss the United States endeavors in Venezuela and what to expect now that a huge election year is here. Saddle up for a January 11th edition of Flashpoint. Minneapolis is again at the center of a national flashpoint. Less than a mile from where George Floyd was killed by a police officer, an ICE agent opened fire this week on a driver who refused to get out of her SUV and then tried to drive away. The 37-year-old woman, an American citizen, was killed. It's led to protests there, harsh words from the mayor and the governor about the president's immigration plan and ICE's tactics in the way agents apprehend people who are in the country illegally. The now former president of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro, appeared in a U.S. court this week after U.S. forces removed him and his wife from that country. President Trump has made it clear he may do the same thing in Colombia, possibly Cuba. He also said the U.S. will sell up to 50 million barrels of Venezuelan oil, and he himself will handle the money gained from that. From an oil grab to a land grab, another round of speculation on the future of Greenland becoming part of the U.S. However, this time the president stated taking it by force was a possibility, as his aides declared Greenland, which is a territory of Denmark, is more important to America for national security purposes here in the Western Hemisphere. Those comments sparked a rebuke from Denmark, along with many other European nations. So what's next in all of this? And more importantly, does all of this make America safer? Let's bring in our insiders to discuss it. All right, joining me at the table this morning, Jason Roe of Roe Strategic. Jill Alper of Alper Strategies and Media is here, as well as Stephen Henderson with Bridge Detroit, and Nolan Finley is the editorial page editor at the Detroit News. Guys and gals, good morning. Let me start here with a quote. You'll never guess whose quote it is. We don't want to be the world's policeman. Strategy of regime change and nation building is a proven failure. Nolan, you had a column on something about this week. I'll start with you. Obviously, that's a Donald Trump quote from the campaign trail. Does that mean America First is out the window, or it's just a new America First?
Well, I think it's hard to say right now, because certainly this is not what we expected from Donald Trump. And, you know, my interpretation of this is that Donald Trump has decided he is the solution to every problem, whether it's in American cities or in foreign nations. He is going to be the world's policeman, something he promised not to do, and that has never worked out well for the United States.
And usually the timeline always increases way further than we think, Stephen.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have a good track record of doing this kind of work. My concern is also a little broader about us here and how we govern ourselves. This idea of, you know, forget about Maduro and who he is, but the idea of that kind of action being taken while Congress sits completely sidelined. And it's not just Venezuela, also the ICE situation in different cities. I mean, we either are a nation of co-equal branches or we aren't. And it seems to me that, you know, whether you're Republican or Democrat, that's something that's got to be in your mind right now. What is the way we do these things? What are the rules? It's really unclear right now.
Yeah, Jason, let me get your take on all of this too happening. And we can't forget about the oil part of it, which I guess that's part of it that could be good for America.
Yeah. I think this, frankly, had a lot less to do with Latin America and a lot more to do with China and them in our backyard and in our hemisphere. The Chinese Belt and Road Initiative, where they go and invest in the developing world in order to extract resources and create, I think, advantages for them geopolitically. That's been going on for a long time. I mean, you can largely treat Colombia as a client state of China right now. And I think this was a flex in the hemisphere and in Latin America. I think when you look at the currency swap that he did in Argentina a few months ago, this is a big play. And we're kind of, I think, mostly everybody's focusing on Venezuela and what it means for them. But I think what the ripple effect that this has with China and with Russia, I would say to Stephen's point, the one big difference in our nation building exercises over the years is before Maduro and Chavez, this was a thriving democracy. And the other places that we've tried to impose our values or our priorities were not. They were dictatorships in some form or another. And so depending on how the administration deals with Venezuela's elections and what our relationship is to them moving forward, if they can revert back to a system they know and worked well for them, but where we will fail is if we try to make them a satellite of the United States.
But already they're questioning the democratic process, right? The elected leader there, they say, well, she can't run it because she didn't give me the Nobel Prize. So, I mean, there isn't a whole lot of principle.
There's one take
here.
But, they've lost 8 million people over the last several
20%
years.
of the population.
And so I don't know if that democratic structure still exists or the people who believed in that. I mean, there's the opposition movement there is not as strong as you would like it to be if you were hoping to turn this country over to somebody. It's rotten with drug gangs. Maduro was a puppet. I don't think Maduro was the mastermind. And so all those folks who were pulling his strings are still in place.
Jill, jump in.
Yeah, real quick, I think that the Americans are not on board with this right now. 63% said, to Stephen's point, that they think the Congress should be consulted, and more than that, what a rebuke for the president that 5 Republican senators broke ranks, voted with the Democrats to say that we need to pay respect or have a vote on the War Powers Act. So, I think he recalibrated here, and we have to see where this goes forward. But ask George W. Bush about Iraq and how these things can play out, especially when we read that there are other countries in his sights.
I've heard people start to talk about this angle of it, but I'm wondering what you guys here think of this. What happens when China decides to, we're also going to strengthen our hemisphere and we're just going to take Taiwan? We've been talking about it, we're going to take that. Or Russia says, well, this is why we took Ukraine, or we're trying to take Ukraine because we're just strengthening our hemisphere. Or North Korea decides to take South Korea, or at least bomb it. What happens then? What standing does the United States have then?
Well, I think one of the things that we're struggling with is what is that role of world leader that we want to play? If you listen to Stephen Miller, who's the Deputy Chief of Staff in the White House, it is about power. It is about raw power and the ability to exercise it where and when you decide. Now, that's not how I think of American leadership, and I don't think it's how a lot of people think about American leadership, but it's clear that this administration is headed in that way, and I think they might actually be okay with the idea that we take what we want, you take what you want, you stay off of our property, our territory, we'll stay off of yours. I think that's a very different interpretation of U.S. foreign policy. I think it's a very dangerous one, but I think that is what this administration believes.
Agree with that?
Listen, I think a few weeks before, there was a lot of talk and editorial pages around the country about exactly that let's let China dominate Asia, let's let Russia dominate Europe, and this is our backyard. I actually think that this strengthens Taiwan, because I think what China, Russia, and the world learned is this dude will do things we never anticipated. And if what they're reporting is true, that they were using Chinese technology in order to, protect Venezuela from an invasion, they failed. I mean, I think we showed, and whatever you think of the intervention, this was a masterful military exercise, and I think it sends a message to Russia and to China that we are the dominant military power. And listen, Russia has been trying to take over Ukraine for 4 years, and they've got all the military assets and bodies you can throw at that, and they still have not prevailed. And so I think, certainly could make the argument they're going to move on Ukraine, but they've been doing it for 4 years without any success. I do think Taiwan right now, China might realize, strategically you could say we're spread thin, maybe this is a good time to go take Taiwan, but I think what we're demonstrating right now is we will take you out. We are better than you at this.
Boy, I don't know. It just feels like that's setting us up for some sort of world conflict.
I think China is a lot better equipped, even than Russia was when it went into Ukraine. I think Taiwan is extraordinarily vulnerable, at this moment as, you know, as it has been.
Yeah, but do remember one thing. When we took out Saddam Hussein, who started engaging with us like the next day? Muammar Gaddafi and Kim Jong-un. Because before that, when we were in battle, two armies met at the front and the leaders sat back in their castles and it was fine. Then we scoop up Saddam and all of a sudden Gaddafi wants to engage with us and Kim Jong-un wants to engage with us. And so that's kind of my point. Like, this is a flex, and whether we agree with the policy or not, I think the repercussions of it do mean something, that we can take out leaders if we want to. Wouldn't prescribe that, but I think it shows that we could.
Jill, do you want to chime in here?
All I'll say is that, you know, nearly 70% of Americans are living from paycheck to paycheck. This is just not at all what they're thinking about, and if this is where the president chooses to spend his time, it's going to be a rough year for the Republicans.
On that a little bit, I want to come back, take a quick time out. I want to find out how all of this might affect strategies with a big election year now on tap. Stay with us. More Flashpoint coming up next. Back here on Flashpoint, and as we finished up that last segment, it's a huge election year, obviously, and with everything we just talked about, kind of a flip in foreign policy from what the president campaigned on. Jason, I want to start with you, and we should point out you do consult for Tom Barrett as a candidate. Does this change the strategy of maybe what Republicans might be thinking as they run their campaigns, both congressionally and in the Senate?
No, I think going back to Jill's point, what people care about is what's happening in their home finances and in their schools and in their communities. So I do think there will be, for the other candidates that aren't Donald Trump, not that he'll be a candidate again, a focus on those kitchen table issues. And I think there are some signs for optimism right now. It's too soon to tell, but we have a GDP that was 4.2% last quarter. We've got an unemployment rate that just yesterday, so this week's announcement, dropped slightly to 4.4%. CPI dropped, the inflation rate, to 2.7. Now, I don't know if these are anomalies or if these are the new Trump-controlled Bureau of Labor and Statistics cooking the books. Let's look what the second quarter is. But if those numbers are an indication of what's to come, and then you have the Trump tax cuts kicking in a couple months, that people are going to have a few more bucks in their pocket than they had, we could see, I think, an economic turnaround that could address some of the things that people are struggling with right now.
And Jill, obviously a midterm year too, so that helps Democrats, at least theoretically. Should they be pouncing on some of this or this year as they start really ramping up campaigns?
Oh, absolutely. And we saw in Virginia and New Jersey two resounding victories for Mikey Sherrill and Abigail Spanberger because the cost of living, it's not even affordability, was front and center. And we already have forgotten, I think, and moved on from the fact that the government was shut down. But having been on the streets and heard people talking about SNAP not having money to eat, right? People are not even thinking about healthcare as healthcare, thinking about it as pills. People are not thinking about groceries, they're thinking about food. They're not thinking about utilities, they're thinking about heat. I mean, the importance of people running for office talking about what they can do now. We're not talking about 30-point plans anymore. We're talking about, you know, and Mikey Sherrill said on day one, I will issue an executive order that reduces utility costs. People's heads are down, and notwithstanding what my friend said about a lot of the new economic statistics that have come out, there were like 50,000 new jobs in the United States of America in the past month. This is a jobless recovery. So people are working harder for less, and they're barely getting by. That has helped the Democratic Party and probably will.
Nolan, do you feel like this is all of that, plus we kind of, Stephen mentioned what's happening with ICE and another two shootings following the one in Minneapolis. It feels like people will be motivated to vote.
Well, you assume they will. And, you know, you remember in 2018, the economy was strong. It was not about the economy when they went into that midterm. It was about the chaos surrounding the president. This election, this midterm election, up and down the ballot will be about Donald Trump. And if he can convince the American people that he's taking them to a better place, you know, the Republicans will do fine. But if voters look at what's going on in Washington and see chaos, they will vote for Democrats no matter what the economic numbers say.
Agree, Stephen?
Yeah, well, I mean, okay, let's start with history. There's one president in the modern era who has not taken a beating at the midterms. That was George W. Bush in his first term, but that was because there was a war on, and wartime elections are different. We don't have that distraction now. People are looking at their pocketbooks.
Yeah,
they're looking
Not
at
yet. I was thinking the same thing.
So they're going to lose seats, right? They're going to lose. They're probably almost certainly going to lose control of the House because that's so close. It's getting closer. There have been some departures from the House that are helping that. I think the greater question again is something that I want to go back to something I said earlier, which is what is the role of Congress, right? What is the role of these people, these 535 people we send to Washington to help run the government, regardless of who's president? I go back to Barack Obama in his first term and trying to get the Affordable Care Act through. The reason we don't have the expanded Medicare that was part of that proposal and the public option and things like that is because Congress and Democrats in Congress balked at it with a Democratic president. They did their jobs. Now, I didn't agree with that, but the idea is that they're there for that purpose. The Republican majority in Congress right now is not playing any kind of role in that regard with Donald Trump, even though they do disagree.
And there's been a few kind of breaking ranks.
A couple people breaking ranks, but for the most part, they're passive. They are accomplices rather than proper adversaries. And so I think people are going to start looking, especially because this is a midterm year, at what people want to do when they go to Washington. What's the role you want to play?
But that dynamic's been in place
for a long time.
For administration after administration. Congress has surrendered itself to partisanship. You get very few defectors from either party on any issue. They go along, they have sort of abandoned their role to be the people's advocate, and they just do what their party tells them to do. I think partisanship is destroying the American political system.
I want to hit a couple of news items. The Detroit News breaking this week that Lieutenant Governor Gilchrist might be thinking about actually dropping out and going for Secretary of State. Jason, let me start with you. How does that change the landscape in your mind?
Well, I think it hurts Duggan because Jocelyn Benson needs to, and the Democratic Governors Association needs to have a vibrant Democratic primary so that Duggan can travel the state without taking shots from them, because he's had a bit of a honeymoon so far. Obviously he had a successful 12 years, but there's not really been any critical look at those 12 years because he's never been in a real campaign in which that could happen. So this will allow Benson and the Democratic Governors Association to start looking at Duggan as opposed to just worrying about getting through an August primary.
Jill?
Yeah, I mean, really the same thing. It does sort of allow her to focus more on November, and every day is really important. I think all of these candidates, they're the mayor is well known to us, but the state of Michigan is not focused on politics day in and day out. And so the faster you can clear a field and you can get on to next and you can focus on the broader electorate, the better you'll be, your chances will be. And so it's a big success for her and the party to have cleared the field.
I also should clarify, does it put him right to the top of the Secretary of State race, by the way?
I don't know. I mean, folks wanted Garland Gilchrist to run for mayor, and he was very adamant, I'm not running for anything but governor, and now he's running for Secretary of State. I think in Detroit, it probably helps Duggan keep Detroit voters, which he's going to need in the general election. I think if Detroit voters look at a ballot and it's got a Republican, Mike Duggan, and Jocelyn Benson on it, they're going to go with Mike Duggan. She's not that popular in Detroit.
Does it feel? Go ahead, Steve.
I mean, I want to say a couple words in defense of the lieutenant governor, who I think a lot of people did want him to run for mayor. His objection to that was that it was Detroit and that he was a statewide presence and candidate. This reinforces that. Whether you believe it or not, that's a different question. But I think that helps explain this move. The other thing that helps explain this move is this is his work. I mean, if you look at what he was before he entered politics, I mean, he ran for clerk in Detroit, came very close to winning, and the work he was doing before in other states all across the country is about voter access and voter protection and many of the things that happen in the Secretary of State's office. I think he's certainly a strong entry into that into that race. I do think there are questions about what it does in the governor's race. I mean, this is going to be one of the most interesting gubernatorial races we've ever had. We have never in my lifetime had somebody who's not affiliated with either party on the ballot saying, I am the answer. This does make it a more formidable contest, I guess, between him and Jocelyn Benson, who's now the presumptive nominee.
We've got to leave it right there, but it could get very interesting tomorrow when we have new polling coming out between the Detroit News and Local 4 here. So stay tuned tomorrow and the days to come. Everybody, thanks so much for your time and your thoughts. We'll be right back. Finally this morning, 4 things, specifically 4 headlines you might have missed this week. The first one we mentioned already, the Detroit News reporting that Lieutenant Governor Garland Gilchrist is considering bailing on the governor's race and running for Secretary of State. Craig Mauger's sources telling him Gilchrist's struggle to raise money and those low numbers in early polls have him mulling that decision. Attorney General Dana Nessel issuing an opinion this week saying House Republicans' unilateral cuts of roughly $645 million in state spending were unconstitutional because a single committee cannot veto funding passed by the full legislature and governor. Budget officials say it means grants for all those programs like RX Kids, which provides new moms with money, the Detroit Zoo, the Motown Museum. Those will all start to be reallocated. Republican Speaker of the House Matt Hall saying he's going to sue over this, calling it a clear political decision by Nessel, who is a Democrat. The food pyramid you remember from grade school was flipped upside down this week. The federal Departments of Health and Human Services and Agriculture announcing the changes that move proteins like red meat, dairy, fruits and veggies, and eggs to the top and grains to the bottom. But doctors warn we shouldn't be eating that much red meat and dairy, and that it shouldn't be atop an inverted pyramid. Well, this message from the feds, though, was simple. Eat real food and not ultra-processed foods, and also limit the alcohol. The HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. also announcing a change to children's vaccines this week. It's now recommending 11 vaccines for kids instead of 18. The CDC still encourages the measles, mumps, rubella, polio, chickenpox, and other vaccines, but it's pulling back on ones like hepatitis A and B. Now, the state of Michigan is encouraging families to stick to the previous schedule, the one that's recommended by the American Academy of Pediatrics. You can find our full conversations with Dr. Frank McGeorge and Dr. Natasha Bagdasarian on that topic on our YouTube channel if you'd like to do a deeper dive. What did you think of today's show? Drop me a line at Flashpoint at clickondetroit.com. We are due for a mailbag segment this month. Hopefully we'll get to that one soon. I'm Jason Colthorp, everybody. See you later.